Please join me in knowing there is only one messiness. Only one. It is what we might call God or Spirit or Source, and it's not tidy. It just is. All of it is. It's our human stuff that wants it to be tidy. But I know that, as we say, the business of Spirit is just to be in each of us, as each of us, all of it part of that one grand thing. Beginning at the beginning of whatever that means, till right now and on into the future, whatever that means. Messy, clean, tidy, random. It's all still God. It's all still Spirit, Source creating, responding possibly to thoughts, responding to intentions, responding to that unknown, I like to call it magic. It is all still Spirit. None of it is bad. All of it is just Spirit. So in that comfortable place I go, in that knowing that no matter what I do, I'm still Spirit expressing. Each of us is still Spirit expressing. I get to tell myself that story and find peace, find serenity, find joy, find love, because I know that I am still expressing Spirit all the time. And in deep gratitude for that, in deep gratitude for the way Spirit expresses through Reverend David today, through the way Spirit expresses through our amazing music team, Heather and Brent, through the technical wizardry of Shani in the corner, the amazing connectivity of Robin and Sandy, who keep us connected to the bigger world outside via these amazing miracles called magical internets. Like I said, it's magic. Doesn't matter. It's all still Spirit, right? It's all still God. All of that, I am so grateful for it. Even the fact that I dropped an entire thought in there and didn't finish it. Nice and messy. Perfect. It's all good. It's all God. And so it is.
So there was a new farm agent who moved into a rural area and was going out to meet the various farmers around the area and kind of get acquainted with them, introduce himself. And he comes to this one particular farm that is just this gorgeous farm, bright red barn, laid out and everything, crops all in a row. And he comes up to the farmer and they're chatting and he says, God has truly blessed you with this farm. It is so beautiful. And the old farmer kind of sits there and says, well, yeah, God has blessed me, and I appreciate that. But you should have seen this place when he had it all to himself. That story is usually communicated as a way of, we have to bring order to all that's going on. But as I became more ecologically aware, I became aware that there's another view of that story, and that is that there already was an order and a harmony, that the farm disrupted all of the living space for all the creatures that were there, and then we get mad because those creatures come back and want to eat our crops, and then we do pesticides, and we do fences, and we do all sorts of stuff. And so it's interesting to look at what is order as we contemplate what is messy. Messy is a term, right? It's a construct. It's a viewpoint that we have of things. And order, on the human level, is a construct that we have of things, yes? And usually it's what makes us comfortable. This story is a wonderful story because it's kind of it captures Cain and Abel in the Bible. You've heard of this story? You know, were you ever like me, kind of puzzled, like why didn't God like Cain's offering? It says they both brought offerings to God. God liked one and didn't like the other. Did you ever kind of wonder, like, why? Is it just me? I guess it's just me. That's why I'm a minister. Okay. What that story is a stub story of something that was common in many cultures at that point in time as civilizations were beginning to form, as ways of how people lived in the world were beginning to form. And so there was this one side that was the hunter-gatherer, herder, nomad style of life, and there was this other side of the settling down, agricultural, farming, raising crops sort of other side of life. And depending on which culture you were in, the gods liked one or the other better. And so in the Hebrew culture, the old Hebrew culture, obviously they were trying to say that God liked the settle down agricultural better than the herder complex. And so we still kind of work with that. We still kind of fight that. Cities and farms, yes? Okay? Eastern Washington, Puget Sound area. You know, we still have that divide going on. I grew up in Oregon and the battle over water rights, and then the same with down in Southern and Northern California, the battle of water rights and who gets them and stuff like that. We're still caught in that, you know, and that's why you've got one kills the other. Because that's how it seems like it has to happen, is one idea kills the other. So Abel and Cain is order. Last month we looked at the whole idea of the paradox of oneness, the things that seemed opposites, the finite and the infinite, the absolute and the relative, time and timelessness. Well, order and order, divine order and human ideas of order are the same sort of thing. It's a paradox. Now, is one better than the other? Not necessarily. Do you want a messy, disorderly brain surgeon when you're having brain surgery? Or eye surgery? Do you want, I've got my buddy Craig here who's a airline pilot. Do you want a messy, airline pilot? Oh yeah, we'll just kind of go whenever we feel like it and wherever we feel like it. No, you don't want that, right? So there's a time for, it's good to have order on the human level, but it's also good to have a perspective sometimes to break out of that and say there's a larger order that's available. A larger thing that doesn't necessarily look like what I think it should look like. That looks, quote, messy. And so we're going to be looking at both the creative process, which, have you ever noticed, is messy? Any women here give birth? It's messy. Yes? We've got artists in here, I know. Sometimes that process is messy. The creative process is messy. Cleaning up your house is messy. The first thing, if you're going to rearrange your garage or that closet, the first thing you have to do is make it worse, right? You pull everything out and it looks worse. It's a mess. So that process, which is messy, we're going to look at that. We're also going to be looking this whole month at resurrection, not as something that happened to some guy 2,000 years ago, but as the ongoing process of rebirth and renewal, which is usually messy. In other words, we're going to be looking at creativity. But let's talk first about our title. Our title of Won't Get Fooled Again, or Will I? How many of you have had that absolute assurance, I'm not going to get fooled again, only to have the experience of getting fooled again? Yeah, okay? Most of us have had that experience of feeling that we've arrived somewhere, we've completed something, we got it, we know it, only to have it seem to come right back around again. I thought I healed that 5 years ago with that person, that ex, that, whatever. And dang, there it is in my face again. So, and it feels like it hits us in the head again. We may feel foolish. We may feel deceived. We may feel just plain stupid. Yes? Anybody besides me ever kind of like, what's wrong with me? And we might question our ability to discern things. dang, I wish I could pick the right woman to be in a relationship. What is wrong with me that I keep getting these losers to be married to or in relationship with? It's them. Oh, damn, look at those three fingers pointed back at me. Or we can question our ability to discern things, or we projected what I just did externally onto life, onto those people out there. And I know you guys don't, but you know people who do stuff like that, right? And we can become cynical and doubting as a result. And first, it's important to know, this is something that Mary O'Malley in her book, What's in the Way is the Way, says, life is trustable, but not always likable. And we want life to be likable, don't we? We want to be able to like life, but it's not always that way. And it's not likable because it's a mirror that reflects not what we think or wish was going on, but what is really going on at a deeper than the surface level, which the ego self, often oriented in its superficiality, and it's just paying attention to the surface of things, which is based on old conditioning and old ideas. It should be this way. This is how I expect it to be because I was trained this way. That ego finds it uncomfortable and unlikable because it challenges the ego's idea of, quote, reality or order as being what it wishes it would be. Are you with me? And the defensive ego points its finger outwards and says life, as that person or that situation, is upsetting me. When what's really happening is the ego is upsetting itself because it's not getting its own way. It's not getting what it wishes for. So if we're willing to move out of trying to control life, breathe, and instead into learning from life, becoming learners as we go through life, we find ourselves moving from upset and fear into curiosity, into a playful engagement with life, capital L life, as it is, recognizing it as simply reflecting rather than antagonizing. And we more deeply understand what Ernest Holmes meant by saying that we don't get what we wish for, we get what we are. Breathe. And then we are being called to align with and embody what we truly want to see in the mirror. See, nature, it's the nature of the formless to flow into form. So this infinite consciousness, this infinite idea is seeking to flow into form. Nudge your neighbor and say, you're the infinite being in form. As we align with the highest ideas of our soul, this is what we do when we go within, when we listen to visioning, when we do that process of going within and listening deeply to not the messiness of our thinking, as Buffy referred to in her opening prayer, but when we listen to something deeper than that, when we listen to that, we experience enlightenment, the opening of new ideas. And as we then align our bodies with enlightenment, got that? As we align our bodies with enlightenment, those highest ideas, we experience resurrection. Resurrection is the enlightenment of the body. It's taking the idea from idea into form, into this. I can have this, I've used this metaphor so many times, I can have this wonderful idea of chocolate, but thank you, I'll take it in form, embodied. Yes? Fill in your own whatever it is you love. So the renewal of springtime that we see happening all around us right now isn't an idea, it's an embodiment in the physical level of the idea of renewal, of refreshing, of rebirth. This is why I called on us last Sunday to get up in that congregational song, the community song, and move to the music. And we did that, again, thank you, Brent, today, to move to the music, to embody the ideas. And even if you're not quite sure of the lyrics, at least you're doing something with your body other than sitting there kind of going, I'm dancing my love, I'm dancing my peace, I'm dancing my joy. We move to it, we embody the ideas. If we stay at the level of only the mentality, only the level of thought, nothing truly changes, and we get fooled again and again and again and again. Breathe. Because we haven't embodied and thus become the new thoughts. They stay at the level of just a lovely thought, not activated into our bodies, not at the cellular level. We haven't completely surrendered to the new higher ideas, and instead we stay safe by looking good. Anybody besides me? It's like, we got to look proper. I don't want to be too enthusiastic about anything. Because the ego cares very much about appearances, the superficiality that I talked of earlier. And an example often happens right here on Sunday mornings when certain people feel it necessary to fix my collar or straighten my stole. I'm not naming any names. And Sherry's not here, but I won't mention her name either. Because it's important for their conditioning, which is what it really is running them in this case, that I look good. Yes? Yes? When we walked in, how many of you, when you walked in here, went, the place is a mess? Huh? I had one person who shall remain nameless who looked at the crooked picture over there and said, "Oh my God, I think it's falling. We got to straighten that out." And it's like, no, this was very carefully, calculatedly made that to look that way. So I appreciate the people's caring about my appearance, but I doubt that Jesus or Buddha or any of the other spiritual teachers really got too concerned about, am I looking good while I'm delivering my message? Right? Rather, they're focusing on the content. What is it that I'm actually conveying? What is it that I'm communicating? What is the message that I want to get across? I don't care whether you like how I look. When I came up through religious science up in CSL Seattle, and there was a little group after every service that would gather together and comment on what Reverend Kathy Ann was wearing that day. And I'm sitting there going, what in the blankety blank? She's just delivered this powerful spiritual message, and all you can do is worry about whether her boots and her skirt matched. And what do you think of the color of her hair this week? So many of us want a resurrection, a transformation. Got that? Transform. It's the form that changes, the cross form. But we don't want the crucifixion that comes with the resurrection. There's an old blues song that says, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. We want the spring beauty that we're experiencing now, but we resist the dying off of fall and the cold, empty tomb of winter. And yet you can't have spring without the falling and the tomb. Breathe. And we all run around and say, I want spring, I want renewal, I want something greater, but I'm not willing to go through the mess. I'm not willing to go through the loss. But if I want something new, I have to leave something old behind. Yes? Yes? If I want something new, I have to leave something old behind. Resurrection, another thing to realize is that resurrection is always preceded by hopelessness. See, if we already know how to solve a problem, we don't need to go deeper, right? We have no need of a resurrection. We have no need of a transformation because, if I want to walk across the street, I already know how to do that. Okay? It's only when we encounter a situation that seems absolutely hopeless, we feel up against the wall, when we feel stuck, that we are finally humbled enough and brought to our knees enough where we can begin to become open to learn and to receive a new thought, which is what this whole movement is called, is the new thought movement. A newness beyond what we've known before or even could have known before that will result in a resurrection, a true lifting into a new way of being, not just thinking, being something new, that will create greater alignment with capital F freedom, which is the nature of the universe, the agenda of the universe, the true nature of the universe. And furthermore, resurrection comes by grace. It doesn't come because I can make it happen. It comes from the givingness of spirit to its creation. That's Ernest Holmes' definition of grace. It comes when I simply say, I no longer know what to do. How many of us, you don't have to raise your hand if you don't want to, but many of us have gotten to that point of going, I'm up against it, I have no idea what to do. Infinite presence, whatever you want to call it, this is yours. And when we do that, when we surrender, something new can be born. Something new can form. We can have that transformation. We can have that resurrection, that lifting up. It takes the surrender of the well-conditioned ego that thinks it's in charge of all of life. You know, we humans used to think that Earth was the center of the universe and everything revolved around the Earth, yes? Some people still think that about themselves. Surrender is a challenging word for the ego, but it's the doorway to the rising of the Spirit within us, the arising of the already resurrected self. You and I have an already resurrected self within us, but we keep a lid on it because, hey, we don't want to let that out. It's messy, and it will look disorderly, and it will not fit socially and be socially acceptable to many people. So let's keep it down and let's be proper, right? You know, you're not you guys, of course. You're wild and crazy and living full, but you know people. This resurrected self lives within us. It's hidden behind the self-righteous, yet really small and limited and limiting ego. So the infinite is continually evolving. It's expanding the expression of its nature into form, whether we like it or not. It's a lovely Eddie Watkins song that has a line in it that says, without your say-so. This is happening without our say-so. The universe is evolving. Breathe. That means you and me too. And the old limited and limiting ego and the old limiting and limited ego-created structures are in deconstruction. Look around. Are in deconstruction because they can't be held in the consciousness, the vibration of the greater idea, the greater expression of life. Take a breath. Yes. She asked me to say that again. This evolution is happening, this forward movement is happening, this expansion of the universe is happening, and the old, limited, and limiting ego-created, ego-based structures on which we have created life as we believe it to be today, are in deconstruction because they can't be held in the consciousness and the vibration of the greater idea, the greater expression of life that is evolving. Now, this sounds really exotic. It happens every spring, okay, right? It's natural. It's happening in the natural world all the time. The old is being deconstructed so that the new can arise. Okay? So, just like it works in nature, it also works in humans, no matter how much we kick, scream, and resist it. And a lot of us are seeing a lot of deconstruction going on of old ideas right now, yes? And it looks messy. It looks like the old, the ugly, is coming forward and being in charge. But what's really happening is it's on a wave that's going to crest and say, ooh, this really doesn't work, and crash. So that something new can arise. And what's happening really is the high consciousness that we have all been vibrating at, not all, many of us have been vibrating at, many of us have been calling in, is on its ascendancy, but what has to get out of the way first is, I realize we have a young person here, but I'm going to say it anyways, the old shit. She's heard that word before, I'd be willing to bet. The old stuff has to get out of the way. And oftentimes the only way it will really, truly embody and get out of the way is we fully embody the nastiness, we fully embody the awfulness to see where it goes and finally say that doesn't work. This is a drunk who finally looks at where their life is going to end up if they keep on drinking and finally says, I need to deconstruct that life and show up at a 12-step meeting. This is the ads we see on TV of, I smoked for 30 years and this is where I'm at now with a voice box or whatever. We see the path of where it's going, and so we have to see the path, and until it smashes us in the face for some of us learn easily, more easily, some of us, it takes a while, right? I'm one that takes a while, one sometimes. Until it shows up and we can really see what the end result is, we won't change. Most of us have needed 2x4s or something bigger to get us to change, yes? You know, we talked about that the universe shows up as a whisper, just a little whisper, and it calls us to change. And we sit there and go, yeah, not right now. And then it shows up as a nudge, a gentle nudge. Why don't you try this? But this is really attractive over here. You know, I know I shouldn't be eating those 3 pastries a night, but dang, they're good. And that bakery is so good. And then it finally shows up as the diagnosis. Bam. And if you don't pay attention to the diagnosis, it shows up as a Mack truck, flattens you out, right? That's how many of us learn. Yes? Hi, my name is David. I'm a slow learner. It takes Mack trucks or 2x4s. So this is what is happening, is this greater idea, this greater expression of life is evolving. It's in the process of becoming, and everything that's unlike it is in the purpose of falling away, but it shows up first for the purpose of healing and release. As Louise Hay said, we can't clean our house if we can't see the dirt. And so we're seeing the dirt, and it looks messy, yes? And it looks painful. And we are a choice of surrendering and flowing with this process or fighting it, resisting it. That wonderful song we sometimes sing called Kicking and Screaming Down the Path of Transformation. One of those paths is easier than the other, you think? But like the caterpillar going through the messy process of deconstruction to be reconstructed into something far newer, far more wonderful, far more free, we can resist and fight, but guess what? We're going anyway. We're going down this path because the infinite consciousness is going down this path. And this isn't an overnight thing, by the way. This is going to take years. This is probably going to take generations. And ours is to be present in doing what is ours to do now. So as children, most of us had fun with messy, yes? Yes. We like to make mud pies, splash in mud puddles or water puddles, until we were taught or conditioned what neatness is, and that it's far more acceptable to be neat than it is to be messy. Anybody besides me relate? Yeah, okay. And so it was more acceptable to our equally conditioned big people in our lives to be that. Or in some cases, we got scared out of playfulness and messiness by the complete chaos and disorder of the big people in our lives. We were the ones who had to bring order to the chaos. Either way. But we stopped playing and enjoying the messiness of creativity. And so I'm going to invite you to play again. To let that inner playfulness, that inner child, that inner creativity out. And that's one of our spiritual practices this week. We've got 3 of them. First of all, the first one is play. Do something playful outside of your normal this week. Okay? And let your inner child direct this. That you don't let your adult figure, well, what would be a proper thing to be properly playful with in a nice, orderly fashion? No, don't listen to that voice. Listen to the kid that says, let's go out and roll in the mud. Roll down that grassy knoll, whatever, that grassy hill. So that's the first one. Play. Go do something silly, fun, playful that is outside of your normal. The second practice is look at an area of your life that you judge as messy and ask, is it really messy or is this creativity expressing? And if it's creativity, what is wanting to be expressed here? What is it that's wanting to be expressed? And then third, ask your high self, your wisdom self, where am I being called into resurrection? Just ask that question. You don't have to do anything with it. Just ask the question and sit with the question. just notice if anything comes up. Are you willing to play with those 3 practices? I think they're all up here, right? Just sit with it. So I want to close with a quote from the book Resurrection. It says, "Humanity is ascending, and this is not an act that is necessarily comfortable or graceful. The challenges that it presents can be remedied by riding the great wave of change, by claiming the potential for the new that is born in the release of the old, and not being fearful in the face of great change, but being gratified that you have come to bear witness to a new life, a new world, and a new way of being expressed." In the 13.5 billion year history of the cosmos, of the universe, in the 4.5 billion year history of this planet, you and I get to be here at this moment, playing, witnessing, bringing ourselves to it. Enjoy that process. Be grateful for that process and live into that process. And you don't have to be in perfect order and do it right. Thank you. Oh, I do have, yes, an affirmation. Say this with me. I open to the messiness of life and learn to play. One more time. I open to the messiness of life and learn to play. So it is. Thank you.